The Kings picking up Keon Ellis's option for the year certainly left a lot of people a little anxious, knowing that he could become an unrestricted free agent next season. The max that the Kings can offer Keon Ellis is 4 years, $89 million. Question whether someone would offer him more, I'd probably be a bit crazy. But 4 years, $89 million, is that too much for Keon Ellis? Is that on point for Keon Ellis? Is that the alpha and omega right there? That number is at the beginning and the end, or are we looking for something a little smaller in dollar figure better for Keon?
For me, that seems a little rich for Keon Ellis.
20 plus per?
Yeah, a player that I really like. I actually love Keon. I think you need Keon Ellis's on your team.
Again, that's the max he can get, not that's the max.
He's a guy that you need on your team if you're going to be a winning ball club. But that seemed to get to that max level for that deal, that seems like a lot, for Keon. I look at him more in that $14 to $15 million range
it's going to be a popular number today.
Yeah,
it's going to be a really popular number.
But that I don't think he would get that on the open market. I really don't. And then maybe you get into situations where he's more valuable to you than he is some random team. And I understand that, but that seems like a lot for Keon. And one of the things that I would ask everybody out there listening, breaking down how these things play out, the contract situation, the Kings cap situation, what they're trying to do. What would you guys have wanted the Kings to do in this situation? It seems like picking up the option was the best decision they could have made. Smartest decision they could have made.
It buys you time. It probably frustrates the player. And it puts Keon in a position, and this isn't going to scare Keon, but it puts him in a position where he's got to play well. What might scare Keon, and I don't think this is true because Doug Christie is here, and Keon with Doug was different than Keon with Mike. But Keon might feel like going into training camp, he's got to prove himself all over again. And he's got to establish himself, and he's got to be great leading into February whenever, or at least for a sustained period of time, where that front office goes, hey, we can't make this official till February 10th, or maybe it is February 10th or 9th or whatever. And, want to work out a long-term deal. We want you to be here for a long time.
Yeah. And from Keon's perspective, I mean, it sucks. It sucks. It really does. He's worked hard to get to this position where I think his value with the Kings and around the league is way higher than $2 million a year.
Yeah.
Like if he was on the open market,
agreed,
he'd get 10, 12, maybe $15 million a year. But unfortunately, the contract situation that he's in and the situation that the Sacramento Kings franchise is in right now, to me, this was the best move for them to make. It comes at a risk because you may upset him. You may end up losing a guy like Keon Ellis who you don't want to lose. But this was the move to make for this franchise from everything that I've seen written and talked about with the options that they have by picking up picking up his option and the options they would have by signing him to an extension on Sunday or Saturday, whatever day that was. This was the move to make for the franchise.
Our man Michael asks here on youtube.com/ESPN1320 over in the chatty house, what is February 9th in relation to the trade deadline next season? Can we trade Keon if he doesn't sign the extension? I don't know that we have the trade deadline for next year yet, Michael, but can you trade Keon? Yeah, of course you can, but there's probably no point because remember, he's a $2 million player right now. So he's probably getting thrown in on a trade that is bigger. Otherwise, you're trading a $2 million player, which isn't going to net you anything that any Sacramento Kings fan is going to be happy with. Right. So I'd probably erase the idea of the Kings trading Keon from your thought process because it just wouldn't make any sort of sense.
NBA on their website has the trade deadline as February 6th, 2026.
Okay, terrific. Do we have opening day yet?
I can
Opening
look
night?
that up.
Sometimes they put like a list of important days.
They have the NBA Finals date ready for next year.
They might. Let's get DJ in here. Elk Grove Kia Talk Line 916-909-1320. DJ, what's happening, baby?
Hey, good afternoon, fellas. Piggybacking off of the Lonzo Ball thing that you guys talked about earlier, man, when I seen that trade go through for what they got back, man, my stomach dropped. I felt like if we had got Lonzo Ball next to, Levine, Lonzo being 6'8", 6'7", good defender, when he healthy, he moves pretty good still. I thought that would have been great. And if we would have went out and got somebody to get next to Sabonis, I thought we would have been all right, in all right shape. So I think the Kings are like holding the cards for real. I think we look at it as Kings fans and say like, maybe people are like undervaluing our players, but I think the Kings is the ones holding the cards and being hesitant to move.
Okay.
All right, he said a couple things there. He said a couple things.
I feel you regarding Lonzo Ball.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the Kings holding the cards. I think they're trying. I think the Kings are trying to make deals, and they're just not.
Do we think Lonzo's better than Dennis Schroeder?
I think he's different. I think these are. I think they're two different.
How about this? What skill set do you think the Kings could have used more?
Lonzo's. I think Lonzo. Shout out to Kyle Madsen in a vacuum is a better player than Dennis Schroeder. There are concerns with how Lonzo can hold up. Like we thought he wasn't going to play basketball no more, and he came back. He got a procedure done. He was able to at least be on the court and play. He's still not a guy that's playing 70 games a year. You know what I mean? So I think skill set wise, everything he brings to the table, I would like Lonzo better than Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah.
But, there's other factors that come into play, injury history, all this other stuff, that if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably go Dennis over Lonzo. And even when I say bringing in Lonzo for me was always as a backup point guard. Like if you sign a trading for
really,
Lonzo, you can't trust it. You can't trust the knee to be a star. That's the only thing.
I hear you.
Skill set, talent wise, he's got that. He's got everything to be a star.
Give me a starting point guard's name then. Because Russ was a backup, Dennis was a backup. Now, I always slotted Lonzo as a starter. I understand your point.
Yeah. Dennis, I mean, he's probably going to end up being your starting point guard.
Oh, no, I think he is. Yeah. But didn't you say ideally you'd rather have Dennis Schroeder?
Yeah.
So who's ideally the starter?
Well, I'm thinking Darius Garland. Somebody like that. Like go after one of them guys.
Oh,
free agent wise,
I don't think that's a thing.
Free agent wise, there's no starting, top level starting point guards. You had to go acquire them, in my opinion, to go get one of those guys in the trade market. But if you weren't able to do that, you get back to Schroeder. You get back even Russ. Like I think Russ's days as a starter kind of done, but
he's really good off the bench last year. Then he came in and was really good as a starter when they needed him to be, and kind of transitioned back to that role nicely afterwards.
Right. I think Schroeder can start for you. Like he's a starter, but when we talked about earlier in the beginning of the Kings offseason, at least finding one of those, James says, and I agree with him, one of those top 15 point guards in the league. I don't think Schroeder is that. He's above the Trey Jones and guys like that, but he's not Garland and those type of guys. So I'm okay with Schroeder, man. Like I think people kind of going off the deep end with the hate for Schroeder and like, no, not Dennis Schroeder. Like we're talking about a guy that's 14-5 for his career. He has played on winning basketball teams. Probably you would say very rarely did he play on teams that weren't any good. And he was part of the success of those winning basketball teams. Like they needed him to perform at the level he has over his career. I think he's a really good point guard. I think he's a really, really good point guard. I think guys people here in Sacramento, they're kind of undervaluing Dennis a little bit. I think he's cool.
I agree.
I'm not,
I like Dennis a lot.
yeah, I'm not here to make it like you signed this all-star point guard. That's not what I'm trying to say.
He's
but
a good basketball player.
He's a good ball player. I like Dennis Schroeder.
You think it's disappointing, just given the names we talked about and heard about month less and all that, and just maybe, do we think Dennis Schroeder was a top 3 option for this front office? Like basically, like this is like option D or whatever.
Let me.
And I guess
let me ask
that,
this
could that make it disappointing? I guess, is that where it's coming from, possibly?
Let me ask this question and see if it factors into how you look at this thing. Is it option D because they chose to get to option D, or option D because they weren't able to get anybody else? Because I think there's a difference there.
Do you think they struck out on others first?
I don't think.
I don't think so.
think they walked away from a couple, or one specifically.
Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, right. There was at least a conversation about Trey. How far that went, I'm not really sure, but that was it. I don't think he's, option, 8 things down the line. One thing that I think that is happening that maybe they weren't quite prepared for, maybe they were. I don't think the players on this roster have the value across the league that some people that we and perhaps the front office thought. This is, I don't want this to come across the way that I know it's going to come across, but we love him. That's our guy. Fans, regardless of the uniform he's wearing on. Malik signed here early last year for a reason. It wasn't there. I know we want to believe, oh, Malik, I stayed for the pizza. Like, nah, it's not really what happened. There weren't suitors out there for my guy. There weren't suitors out there, especially at the cost. I know everybody said, oh, 18 mils a bargain. 18 mils a bargain. What does that tell you? Malik signs, but what's that tell you about what last summer looked like? And now you get in here and you had, at best, last summer, limited teams inquiring with Malik Monk and his agent. What do you think that looks like this year? If the market has already been set, now in his market has been set. Like it's solidified. If you had people skeptical of that last year, what do you think they are this year? And you've got to give up assets to move. Navigating, it's what makes the LeBron James thing so fascinating. If Rich and LeBron's plan is to executing a trade for a $50+ million player to a team that's going to win is virtually impossible unless you have a Chris Paul contract. Unless you have a $40 million contract for a player you don't care about that you can just unload and not think about again. And when you talk about contending teams, be it Cleveland, Boston, whoever, who has that contract? No, I don't know that anybody does. We're in an interesting world. We're at an interesting time in the NBA.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that real quick. People are scared to death of these aprons.
Facts.
Like if they're going to make a move,
Yep.
they are going to be, they ain't taking no flyers. They are going to be 100% sure, because these aprons, first and second, even getting close to the first, that's these NBA teams shook right now. So I think that affects the market too. And like you said, it's a real interesting time in the league right now.
We'll come back.